What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the altcoin market, coming off of a video I published early this morning discussing Bitcoin, where we dove into the discussion of the bearish divergences that have emerged over here on the Bitcoin price chart, leaving a lot of people wondering, well, what does that mean for the altcoin market? Well, that's a fair question, but it's likely going to depend on whatever the Russell 2000 decides to do. Now, tomorrow, we're going to end up having the last day of Q3. So it's September 30th. It's the final day. Then we're going to start Q4 there for October 1st. So there's a lot that could end up happening here for the Russell 2000 in the final day, or as we start the new quarter. How does the market react on the first day of the new quarter? The Russell 2000 sits just a hair below the 2021 all-time high, the 2024 all-time high, fighting against some of these daily candle closes that have happened in here as we're getting ready to wrap up the quarter, historically speaking, and really just what we saw 2 weeks ago when the Russell 2000 closed into the new all-time high for the first time ever, and then Total 2 closed into the new all-time high the first time ever on the exact same day. Seems vitally important, obviously, that that's going to be a factor into determining the direction of the altcoin market here. That's something that we've talked about intensely on this channel, and of course, conditionally awaiting on the RTY. But as we get really close, it's kind of like this sense of urgency, right? Because like anything could happen here as we get to this moment of how it's going to react to close out the quarter and to start the new quarter. But the interesting thing has been how there's been a lot of these similarities on these bearish divergences that have happened over here on Bitcoin, similarly to what we actually saw at the peak of 2021, where we got this new high, yet we had a relative strength bearish divergence. We had a MACD cross bearish divergence. And of course, we've had these bearish divergences happening over here on Bitcoin's relative strength, along with the MACD cross bearish divergence happening over here. So this chart in particular is kind of setting Twitter on fire, but it's just data, right? So it's just kind of like, interpreting it however you want to interpret it. This is just what the oscillators and the indicators show compared to what we had back in 2021. But of course, one of the things that's a different element from what we saw back here in 2021 is what? The Bitcoin dominance, right? We've never had a bull run or a top come in for the market where the dominance hasn't collapsed on itself entirely. And even on the monthly time frame here, these are things that I've pointed to many times. You actually finally have a trend change happening here in the oscillators and weakness emerging over here in the Bitcoin dominance. And this would what? Imply that it's more favorable conditions for the altcoin market than it would be for Bitcoin. Still, gonna require that Russell 2000 to do something. I love that term, unequivocal. It sounds smart, but it does mean it's not debatable. These things move together. But while all these divergences emerge over here on Bitcoin on the weekly time frame, and that this cross really comes in here just like weeks ago over here for Bitcoin, is that story also true for the altcoin market? And the reality is, not yet. I pointed to this in the last video. Yes, it is starting to curl. Sure, it could go down, but it hasn't done it yet. The only time we get close to seeing a cross actually happen is right over here on the 5-day time frame, where we have a little bit of a divergence happening in here where we do go slightly lower than we did over here back in November and December, and a cross starting to happen in here. However, there are still 3 days left in this candle. There was one other time where we got really close to doing that, and it was right back over here, which is what I pointed to in the last video, where it gets really, really close and then saves itself. Well, there's 3 days left in this candle. What are the things that we're going to see happen here in the next 3 days? Right, we're going to see the quarter close out tomorrow. Then we're going to see the new quarter start on Wednesday. There's enough time for that thing to be able to save itself. You do have a falling relative strength index in here, which isn't the best sign, but there's enough time for it to still be able to save this oscillator. And this is the same type of behavior we saw right over in here back in January of 2024. If we isolate these two different moments right here and look at them structurally, there's a hope, there's a prayer, right? You could see it really kind of build a range in here, kind of sweep this low a little bit, and then it's able to recover. And then this is what? This is the euphoria of the market. If you reflect back to what it was like back in February, March, and April, right? This is where we're never coming back down. We're flying. This is where we're talking all about it and talking about all the euphoria happening in the market. It's what led to that euphoric run, getting that breakout from that moment. Well, what do you think is going to happen if we get through here? It's going to turn into euphoria at the same time. But it also makes sense logically, if we got through here, it turns into euphoria. One, of course, you get through the all-time high, that's where the crowd comes pouring back in. Two, there would likely be the confluence of the stock market doing it at the same time. If the stock market wasn't doing it, it'd be I don't know. But you'd have the confirmation of it happening at the exact same time as well. Historically positive for the altcoin market. Then things logically make sense and all is well in the universe over here for the Bitcoin dominance, and with the oscillators falling and making more sense of shifting its way back down as the altcoins outperform Bitcoin, right? These things aren't ruled out, but it'll be an interesting moment to watch as we head into the end of Q3 and the beginning of Q4 for Tuesday and Wednesday. These arguments are still there. It's just likely a condition to get that Russell 2000 for that to happen and for this thing to not be something like that. Right, where we're just kind of finding some supports here still on these levels, and then the Russell rejects, the altcoin market rejects from the all-time high, and it goes way down, right? But the reason why it's also a fingernail biting moment as well, when we're back at these highs, I keep talking about doing the hedge as we're at the high, waiting for a conditional breakout. I'm willing to blast some cash into some assets that I love, and I'm still 2/3 long the market, so I'm really hoping this thing busts out of here. But it's important to note that, right? Like if the Russell does pull back, if it doesn't get out of here, look what ends up happening to this chart every time like an actual confirmed 5-day breakthrough there does occur. Like things get real nasty, and they get real nasty really fast. And that's the really hard thing about this market these days, is that the amount of leverage and the amount of people who use margin in this market causes these wipeouts of like 30% to happen in a matter of a day when things get real ugly. And so when you get into this type of environment right here, you're having to really bet that's going to be the outcome. It could be, right? But I think you'd probably get your signal from over here on the Russell that that's going to end up being the case. And so I want to show you this data and show you, hey, like if that thing crosses, what typically happens next? A massive liquidation ends up happening in the market when these events are occurring. Marks at the top of the market happen in these types of things. There's similarities in here, no doubt, to what the stochastic RSI does right here, right before we get to that type of moment, right? That's exactly what the top of 2021 looked like. But at the same time, it can trick. It can throw a curveball in here and not end up doing it by the time the candle ends up coming to a close. And that's a lot of ifs and buts and unknowns. And that's the thing I'm trying to present here, is just like, dang, man, this is an intense moment happening in here. And we're about to end the quarter, and we're about to see how that Russell does to wrap up the quarter. And if this thing can give us a conditional signal on what to do with the cryptocurrency market at that time. Again, this is the 5-day time frame. The weekly has not done what Bitcoin has, right? The stochastic is still bouncing around up in here. This has not crossed itself yet. There's not like a bigger weekly divergence happening in here. Unlike with Bitcoin, where the weekly stochastic has already crashed all the way down. The cross has already happened over here on the MACD. And there is even that divergence right in there between these two movements right here. But a lot of this is probably going to be dictated by the next couple of days over there on the Russell. And so we're going to be real locked in here for this week. We're going to be paying really close attention to see if the Russell flashes a signal very quickly. And if it does, we'll address it immediately. But I wanted to show you like how close things are, right? Like when these types of things happen in here, we saw a big liquidation in the altcoin market. You know, over the course of 10 hours, this one right here was negative 24% for the whole altcoin market together. So, you know, picking and choosing sides with these types of oscillators happening in here, you know, it's a gamble. If this thing can save itself, it would be very similar to what happened back in here. Similar type of structure in here. It would make sense to break out if the Russell breaks out, and then we have a parabolic wave. But if the Russell doesn't, then it would have been like, hindsight. See, look, it told us, right? And so that just kind of tells you how on a razor's edge we are right now as we're approaching this moment. And I just wanted to present that to you. I think that crypto Twitter has tried to label me as calling the top, which I haven't done. But I definitely want to present the data to you to say, hey, look, like here's the other angle, right? Social media, YouTube, it rewards positive, bullish content, right? That's it. But then what happens when markets liquidate and things go south? People say, well, why didn't anybody warn us about it? Now I'm mad. So I'm not here to tell you what is going to happen, but I'm here to show you what the data looks like and what are the time periods where we've seen things like this happen before. And you're kind of on a razor's edge over there on the altcoin market and with the Russell 2000, but we're approaching a very critical time where we're going to close out quarters and open new ones. So there's the possibility for price action to happen pretty quickly right here. And we definitely know that's the thing we've been waiting on over here. And it's not that it matters so much for Bitcoin as it's really tracked that S&P, NASDAQ, and Dow than with that altcoin market being with the Russell. And so when I posted about my newsletter being published yesterday, which is 2 days earlier than I usually do, I stated that I'd worked through the weekend to get this together. It's a long one with important observations. Do not wait. And that's why we've got a second video out too right now. This altcoin market, if that 5-day candle matters, well, then it means that the next couple of days are going to be pretty important, doesn't it? The MACD's got to save itself here within these next couple of days. Or if it doesn't, what happens? We see things get pretty ugly. And we're also going to go into the end of Q3 and the beginning of Q4 in that time frame of that candle. So it's a time to be really paying attention to the market, I believe. I'm locked in. I'm watching. I'm ready to be like, yo, Russell's broken out. Let's get a go. But I'm also sitting on edge, being cautious, waiting to see how that's going to react. And so that's what we're going to be doing for the next few days. I'm going to keep the content coming, and we'll get through this thing and see how things go here as the quarter comes to an end. But all right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. You can check out the newsletter over here. It was just published yesterday afternoon at blockchainbacker.substack.com. There's a link in the description to this video to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, I will catch you guys tomorrow. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.